Our bands are ready, friends. Okay. So let's take a look at them. A reminder for everybody, 7 maps in our pool. Ban, pick, ban, and then Decider. Jesse.
Yeah, right off the bat, no surprises. Chalet always getting banned out by Empire. That's not a big shocker. Oregon was my pick for the ban as well. I want to say, with these bans especially, I don't think we're going to see any really one-sided games. These teams have very similar map pools and the maps that they enjoy and the maps that they don't. So with these two out of the way, I think we're going to see 3 even maps almost no matter what we get. But we'll see what ends up coming through here. A lot of options. I know it's Empire's first pick coming up. They could go for, I mean, there's so many. The Coastline for sure. I think they could go Cafe. Clubhouse is there. You know, Villa maybe, but I don't know if they're going against their opponents. Interesting they go for Coast, though, because this is actually one that NIP will pick almost every chance they get. Empire steal it and pick it first, so that's going to be one where they try to contest them on it. And then Cafe brought in by the Ninjas in Pyjamas. This is a map that they were able to, well, actually drop the other day. NIP against Sandbox, Empire in their hand on Cafe. They've been good most of the year, not against BDS in the EUL Finals, though.
I mean, both teams' map pools are incredibly compatible. It's just kind of a question about where we end up. No Bank, no Villa, which I do think would have been interesting as a decider if we needed it. Both Empire and NIP do have at least a little bit of proficiency on it, but where we stand now is Club instead. Yet again, Empire, whenever they get the chance to play this, they're going to take it every time, but the fact that we're going all the way to it as a decider is a little bit curious. NIP, for their own part, 10-7. Sorry, no, that's my bad. That is 15-5 over the span of the last 9 months or so, and they look incredible on it overall, but Empire, again, they will take this every single chance they possibly can. Overall, all 3 maps are ones that both teams seem like they really, really enjoy. So this is just both of them going hand in hand for the rest, for this entire series. I don't really know if this swings one way or the other.
I know, especially for Clubhouse. You look at NIP, this is a map that got a 6-game win streak on. They haven't lost it since the Mexico Major against a little team called G2, who weren't even strong enough to compete at this event.
Friends, I'm very excited for this one. I mean, you see Empire versus NIP, you're like, okay, this is going to be a really fun game despite the whole situation. I am very much looking forward to it. You say the maps are very compatible between both of these teams. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. We're hoping for this to go. So thank you very much, Jesse and Jacob. Let's then toss it to our casters. It is time. NIP versus Team Empire. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Milos. It's a pleasure to be here once again as we get ready to dive into our first series of the day here, which you just heard the analyst break down very, very nicely. Let's start talking about it ourselves here, though. NIP versus Team Empire, with arguably the 3 of the best maps for each of those teams making it through the pool. This is bound to be a very competitive series at the minimum because of that factor.
Absolutely. You and I were just sitting here going over maps at the desk as soon as they were doing it as well, and we actually came to the same conclusion. You know, these map pools are extremely compatible, and with the maps we ended up on, I think we're going to get a banger of a series. The big thing to talk about right now is what happened in both of these squads yesterday. A lot of conversation around not only Ninjas in Pyjamas, but also Empire and what happened up against the Sonics, especially in map 2 on Oregon, where there were some blunders from the NA team that allowed Empire to sneak back in and take the series.
It is important to note as well, and the desk touched on this too, that once again, Empire unfortunately still dealing with the kind of caveat, the asterisk, if you will, that they have a couple of players playing from the hotel right now, so they aren't able to get that full cohesion on stage with themselves, where obviously NIP does have their full roster here and available, so they'll have a slight advantage as a result of that. They too, however, struggled a little bit yesterday as we saw them take on Sandbox. That one went to a full 3 maps where unfortunately they faltered and lost it 1-2. Still with some usual performances coming out, at least on the individual side from NIP though, so I think that speaks more to the advances of Sandbox more than necessarily the disadvantages that we saw NIP be faced with in the course of that matchup. Either way though, we're getting into our first map. Let's see if NIP or Empire are going to be able to continue to bounce forward here in the group as they face off against each other, with our first map, as you can see, being on Coastline.
Well, it is going to be Empire's choice, and they've already got a dub here at LAN up against Sonics yesterday. And it was 7-5 fashion, took the entirety of regulation in order to get it done. We'll have to see how it breaks down in this one. This is Pyjamas. And with the bans now, as we've already got Nomad removed for Empire.
Nomad making perfect sense for a Coastline map, just when you consider, once again, the kind of donut shape of the overall map, making it very, very easy to throw those airdrops down and be able to block out most of the kind of aggressive tendencies that would come out from defenders through wide rotates, especially those hallways that are going to be very, very useful for them if they're going to be unimpeded. Second ban, very similar in terms of the rationale behind it, as Lion fulfills an extremely similar role, so just get rid of both of those, and now it's going to be a lot easier for the defense to kind of roam around the map throughout the course of these rounds here. We might need to see some more creative operator picks to try and make up for that. As we get to our defender bans, though, the first one there is going to be Cade.
You're really hitting the nail on the head with the offensive side there, John. And with the Kaid ban coming in as well, just trying to prevent some of this utility that could possibly be holding up these important walls, like the new VIP wall, for instance. Valkyrie just going to be, well, what she always is. A lot of info, a very good gun, a nitro cell, way too many things that you want to give to the opposing team, so they're just going to remove it.
And so with that, we will get ourselves into the first round here. Not too surprising on the bans. We do get both of the anti-roamers knocked out, though, so a little bit aggressive on that front. That will leave some other options available to our attackers, of course, but we'll talk more about that when it becomes relevant over the course of the round. Let's get into it, though. We're going to be starting out with a kitchen and service defense, as Empire will be on the defensive side here. Operator lineup, not going to be too surprising that they're going to be bringing to the table here. The Oryx obviously might stand out to a couple of people, but Oryx has become pretty standard as far as Coastline games are concerned, because of that hatch play and his ability to jump up through them to be able to get to the second floor and obviously remove the limitation of only being able to access the staircases.
Well, away from Doke and into more info here for Julio, so he'll pick up 0. Hopefully that will assist him a little bit, as yesterday was definitely not his best day. A .75 up against Sandbox, but it just seemed like Sandbox really had Nip's number, especially when it came to static. His entry stat was truly incredible, so we'll have to see what both of these teams can possibly muster in that category. Both of them actually lacking up against their opponent in that area. So either way, though, ladies and gentlemen, do want to remind you guys of this just before we get too deep into this series. This is not the only stream that's going on in the current moment. We also have Rainbow Six Bravo up and going on right now, being casted by the lovely Ace and Dez, so make sure you guys check in. Already heard them yelling before you and I got on broadcast, so there's definitely some things going on there that you're going to want to check out.
And if you don't have a second monitor, or you just don't have the attention span to watch 2 streams at once, keep in mind our command center will be coming back to you in between all these games on our main stream here to be able to break down all the action that's going on over on our Bravo stream, as well as here on the Alpha stream if you just want to stick around here. Anyway, let's talk about some of the opening action we've got going on in this first round, as NIP is working on their initial clear. Not going to see anything crazy for these first few seconds. A couple of hatches getting popped open, a few drones zooming around the map, but other than that, don't expect anything too crazy here for the first 30 seconds or so of the round, as NIP looks for a safe path to establish their first bit of map presence.
Well, in traditional fashion for Coastline, Empire is going to be holding most of the odds and ends, the entries to the building, making sure that Ninjas in Pyjamas can't get away with too much here inside of the opening minute. You see Scyther currently manning inside of VIP, as well as White Stairs being occupied by Empire as well. Ninjas in Pyjamas is going to take their time and just make sure to use this drone game, try and get them a little bit farther, especially inside of those frag areas. So as this first minute expires, Empire just waiting on their laurels here, as we'll see what Ninjas in Pyjamas want to do with this side of the map.
See once again here. NIP still taking their very cautious time with things. Finally going to start using that hard breach to be able to open up access into VIP and start crunching down on any bit of the extended second floor setup we'll get from Empire. Not going to see a whole lot of that, though, specifically because of the site choice we'll have, just having to try and defend into VIP a little bit. But overall, as you can see, just trying to more than anything deny access to the outside of that. That will once again give over the keys to that upstairs, especially the top-down angles that are now going to be opened up here by players like Pino on the sledge. And it'll continue to do that over by the circle couch and other areas near here as well to continue to open up POVs against the possible anchors from Empire down below there if they can get lucky and find one of them out here before they eventually have to assault the site at some point in the next 45 seconds or so.
Yeah, and this is what the entirety of this roam is intended to stop, is what Ninjas in Pyjamas is currently doing with Penthouse. You don't want to allow Pino to get too much control over that space because it makes it very easy for a service plant that we could be seeing come in a little later on. Empire still have plenty of roamers around the map and obviously some cross angles that could thwart a lot of Nip's plans, but you can see they're already starting to clear out the service area. They'll get rid of that Evil Eye on the desk as well. Some other things. We're able to clear that laser gate, but that'll more than likely be reset later on here as we're already into the last minute.
You can already see the 2 players that were pushed out towards the lobby for Empire. Only one of them, I believe, fully getting droned out there, but they do back both of them away as we've come down to the final minute here. No longer is there any need to hold that extended presence as they can basically turtle in the site here and fend off the direct execute, which Nip is going to have to go for here. With that lobby control, they're going to get the capability to try and work themselves in through both the bathroom as well as the service door itself, in addition to keeping pressure from the kitchen window. And with that, they're able to leverage the first kill relatively scot-free, actually. As you see Scyther's health getting bled out there, and NIP claim it for themselves here. here. Always, however, able to respond to that from back upstairs as he finds Pino. And now Kamikaze next to falls. Always gets himself another one with Muzi rappelling back up to try and assist, leaving just Psycho as well as Julio in the fight here. Psycho picks up his first. Julio nearly getting a second exchange for this team, but with only 5 seconds left. It's looking rough, and Dan will clean up the final 2 to give Empire the opening round.
A great round from them overall. Love the patience, especially in the re-entry upstairs being the saving grace of this round, not allowing Ninjas in Pyjamas to apply too much pressure to their site players and allowing them to step up to the plate inside of the actual site to deal the damaging blow to Ninjas in Pyjamas. Especially with Empire coming up a kitchen hall is going to be a difficult round for Nip, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. Into round 2 now as Ninjas in Pyjamas will be attacking double bar this time around.
Let's take a peek and see how exactly the potential operator lap's going to change. No huge mix-ups here, mainly just Dan working himself off of the operator from the previous round as he's going to be back on the Wamai this time, adding that little bit of extra utility mitigation and forcing them to dump in a bit more than they might have had to do previously, and that'll basically be a horizontal exchange as they'll move the Aruni over to the Wamai, and once again keep the same general amounts of utility mitigation as they move into the second round.
Also going to be bringing Malusi along for the ride as well, just to slow the entry of Nip into the actual site. This is a site that desperately needs it as well, and just a reminder, blue bar not going to be occupied too heavily by Empire. They'll extend this out towards the eastern side and try and work the lobby space in order to make sure that no one can possibly plant here. And that's why this wall is going to be destroyed here on Coast. This is a rudimentary one we usually tend to see, so Nip will be ready for this, as more than likely their plan will be, well, what everybody else's plan is. Either plant on this couch that we're looking at right now or over in Sunrise next to the bomb chassis.
So once again, no surprises coming in terms of the setup. Should be a fairly straightforward affair for NIP to be able to clear this out as well, but obviously looks can be deceiving, and NIP will have a long checklist of things to be able to take out, such as that setup behind the bomb chassis, as well as any support that's going to come from behind the couch. That'll more than likely force them into going for top-down control, just like we saw in the previous round there. So we're going to be wanting to take away Hookah and a couple other key areas here horizontally. They're going to want to try and get access to some other places like the outside of the pool door there, be able to open that up as much as possible so that they have a direct path to the site once the timer gets low enough to be able to force them in, as we saw in the previous round. Weren't really able to accomplish it last time, and Empire was able to easily tear that attack apart with the majority of the setup they had still in the site in those dying seconds of the round. So now NIP need to find a way to speed this up or open up the clearance just a bit more so they can work their way into the site a bit more cleanly this time.
Now, Ninjas in Pyjamas able to get the opening pick in the last round, but really didn't mean too much to the overarching story of round 1. If for round 2, it could be a little bit different, though, as Pino will be hopping into Penthouse Bathroom and quickly making his way into Guitar. Not too much of a read on these Empire members that are more extended off towards site, but it's definitely not the vertical play. It's into the horizontal here as they're trying to hold on to Kitchen as well as Office. You can see how extended Empire are on this bottom floor here. We have every single avenue locked up, trying to work the stairwells, everything of the sort. This is exactly what you want to see out of Empire.
It's important to note as well that Empire were able to utilize kind of a re-aggression from specifically this area, the Cool Vibes stairs, to really, unfortunately, hamper Nip's progress there as they backed away from their other aggressive positions, kind of a midpoint of the round there, but then realized because there was no pressure from NIP on anywhere like Sunrise and very minimal pressure for even places like the kitchen window, they had no problem heading back up Cool Vibes there and re-assaulting against NIP, so NIP will need to watch out for that. Shepard, in the meanwhile, as we go back to current events, is going to have to watch out for himself in a second. He's got Muzi and potentially one other player trying to lurk up against him here, so we'll have to rely on support from his teammates, and he might very well get that in the form of Dan, as he's going to pre-knock that window in the event he wants to try and go for a more aggressive play in a few seconds. And you can see the concentration of Empire players now over here towards Cool Vibes. Muzi is now the one that really has to be careful about himself, as the tables have truly flipped on this specific situation.
Like
Air's going to push him, and no! They don't realize he's there. He goes right in for the double, and that's a massive opener for NIP a second time.
Not supposed to break down that way. Empire will at least be able to fight back, and Dan will get one as well. We get the equalizer, but not before Julio can step up. He'll be able to take down Dan. It's a 3 versus 2 in favor of Ninjas in Pyjamas, and they still have plenty of time to get this done. Initially, I thought that Nip would run into a couple of problems. They were starting to get low on time. It didn't really look like they had an answer to a lot of this, but Empire just not aware of the player on Cool Vibes, and Muzi getting away with a lot there.
Julio patiently waiting for an aggressive rotate from someone on Empire from blue into the Sunrise bar, but not going to get it. It's going to be Scyther instead that strikes first here from outside in the hallway, and as well, he'll be able to move forward to take out Julio, leaving just Pino in this fight. With only 10 seconds left to clutch, it gets the first kill though, but Shepard's got the shotgun primed and ready to go at the bottom of the staircase. He'll quickly exchange that final kill out and secure a second for Empire, as they're well on the path to a lead here.
Already a much better series here from Shepard. Unfortunately, fortunately enough for him, he is one of the affected players for Empire, and that thing, or that makes things a lot more difficult for him overall, given his role. He really likes to use the monitors around him, obviously, to get some extra intel. Every single player at LAN does, and with him off on his own island inside of his room, he doesn't have that anymore. It's very difficult to try and coordinate things as cleanly as you would before, but he stepped up here in a very big way for Empire, and it's definitely paying off some very serious dividends.
So Melusi going to stay in play here for Empires. They just quickly 6-pick that back in, I believe over from Amazi, if I caught that correctly, before we went back in. Unimportant details, a fairly minor switch, not going to cause any shakeups on the NIP roster either, as that too is going to remain very similar to what we've already had in previous rounds. The Zero, for instance, staying in play, as they need that extra intel to be able to line up the assault for themselves, as well as the possible capability to knock out some utility. They've got a few other ways to accomplish that as well, most notably the Twitch drone that we can see sneaking in, especially inside of Hookah here, as Empire is going to have to play some angles that are a bit further back, so any utility that's placed a bit more forwards, closer to the door, for instance, is pretty much primed for the picking for Muzi's utility there, so we'll have to see what he's able to successfully knock out over the course of this round. Keep in mind, of course, he's also going to be focused a bit on fragging duties, as he will fulfill that, considering he has the F2 there, so might not fully be able to commit himself to that once we reach that minute 30-second marker later in the round.
Default plant knocked out inside of Billiards, utility stack here for Vase, also with the recent buff to that space in general because of what they did to the windows on this map, making it a little bit harder to reach here. So those mute jammers will actually be allowed to exist, whereas before you could simply just shoot them off of the roof and things were fairly straightforward from there for the offense. But now this time around, Ninjas in Pyjamas has a little bit more to do than they normally would. These mute jammers don't only hold up the walls, they'll also stop Julio from trying to get info if he does want to launch one of his cameras into one of those single panels. Looks like the dangerous version of Coastline will start here in round 3 as Dan will have our first spawn kill of the game, taking out Psycho.
First, opening kill for Empire inside of this series, and a good one at that here. Inside of only the first 45 seconds or so, to be taking out what's normally a pivotal player for NIP, but over the past few months hasn't necessarily remained the case. It's really been Muzi that's become the highlight for this team, and certainly showed that yesterday in their game versus Sandbox. We'll see what else the rest of the team's going to be able to do, but meanwhile, it's Dan just running around, picking up multiple kills, as now he's grabbed Muzi as well. Almost like I jinxed it there, as he's going to go down, and that leaves the fragging power for NIP at a serious lack now with the removal of both of those players.
Dan has always been an incredible player, and it seems that he's came even more into his own since we'd seen him previously. Just as a reminder, in Stage 3, Empire did end up finishing second behind BDS. So this team, definitely nothing to shake your head at when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to Dan's play. I mean, you heard the guy himself inside of his interview. He is just very well suited for situations where there's a lot of bodies trying to come in onto him. So looks like he'll be able to get away with a little bit too much here for Nip's liking, as they're still on the outside of the building. Julio trying to get some extra information up top inside of Hookah with these SAM cams, but none of this really going to bode too well for them. Joystick's going to add insult to injury, as well as Kamikaze simply cannot react to the Sunrise player.
That's 2 successful outside kills coming in over just the course of this round from Empire. NIP need to be cautious of this, as it's only going to unleash more of those attempts later on in the half, now that Empire has the confidence and knows that it works. Finally, an exchange will ring out here as NIP have 2 players on the Hookah window rappel, and Julio's able to use that position to finally pick up the first trade against Dan. A very important player as well here, as we already saw previously in the round. Dan picking up some massive kills for himself, 2 of them in fact here. Now, of course, he being down on the ground is going to make things just a tad easier for NIP. Still, unfortunately, a 2v4, though, so while it may be easier in the grand scheme of things, it is not an easy round at all here, as they're now going to have to try and force their way into Hookah. Still have, I believe, 1 additional Toxic Bay to be thrown out here as well. One nice kill found by Pino, but it is immediately exchanged out by Joystick. Julio does catch Scyther on the cross from Hookah, so we might not be done just yet. Time, however, is once again getting low, and it's now a 1v2 here for Julio to try and clutch it out, and unfortunately, he's up against the shotgun at relatively close range here, so as long as the read is there, and there you go, Shepard once again, 1 pump to end it, as Empire go for a 3rd in a row.
And we talked about it last round, we'll talk about it again. Shepard, he's just looking a lot different today in comparison to what he was yesterday, especially here on this coastline. In my personal opinion, this has got to be one of Shepard's best maps. Whenever you look back to the history of Empire, this is one of those maps where he just pops off, and everybody always remembers the game of him going absolutely nuclear as Lion on offense as well. So great Great stuff here from Empire thus far, but for Ninjas in Pyjamas, they've got to pick up the pace. And guys, they've got some history on this map as well. Coastline's the most played map in LATAM inside of Stage 3, so there's really no excuse for what's happening right now in the moment, especially given the fact that Coastline is so offensive-sided.
It's also important to note here that when we look back at the map picks, this was a bit of a mind game played by Empire that they picked into this one. NIP more than likely saying, cool, we have no problem going to this map. We feel pretty prominent on this map, so we're going to go over to Kafe, which is another map that Empire favors a decent amount as well there. So considering that, this could leave NIP in a very, very delicate position if things do not turn around at some point here on Coastline for them. But we'll save our breath on that until we get deeper into this map as well. Empire's got a good start. We still have a whole other quarter of this match here before the teams switch sides, and that's an opportunity for NIP to come back and tie us up at 3-3 as well.
We have so much game left, but it just feels like Empire's gotten so much done inside of these 3 rounds thus far. Ninjas in Pyjamas really need to wake up in the moment, just really not able to find the frags in any convincing way like they would want to, especially inside of the early round here. And for them, they're used to the bans that we're seeing. They usually end up banning the line, which they did follow through with on this map. Obviously, the Nomad can lead to some things, but Empire hasn't been outside of the building, and also with NIP and the way that they've been taking map control, it's not like Nomad would necessarily assist them in any capacity in this. Yes, maybe they could have cut off some rotations inside of the top space earlier, but that's really about it. Past that, Empire's just been playing a really stellar game thus far on Coast.
Uzi continuing to patiently wait to see if that aggressive swing from Empire is going to show up once again. It's actually very well weighted from Empire. It seems like they're cooling off on it a little bit. Obviously, Dan went crazy with the run out back on round number 3 just in the last round here, but this time it's going to be a lot cooler, calmer, and collected here as they sit more at the threshold to the initial expected entry points from NIP and kind of wait to be able to pick up a kill there. Good variance coming in from Empire. It's going to constantly keep NIP guessing and force them to slow down and ultimately waste time that doesn't really need to be wasted here, which only plays further into the favor of Empire. Good stuff from them.
Absolutely the case, my friend. Ninjas in Pyjamas, the minute off the board now, still trying to progress forward. And just a quick conversation going back to this Nomad really quickly as I look deeper and deeper into these stats for NIP on this map. Empire actually with a pretty solid ban here across the board, just simply because of the win percentage that NIP actually have on the offensive side. This is their most winning op when they bring this character. So actually a very solid ban here from Empire that could be slowing up NIP in a certain way. Again, the rotations that we've seen from Empire really wouldn't mean all that much to the overall utility there, but still, it's one of those things where when you're used to having it and you have to move away and pick something else, it can definitely throw a wrench in the cogs and kind of throw you off your game. So either way, Empire with a pretty awesome pick when it comes to the offensive side. Either way, though, minute and 10 seconds left here as Ninjas in Pyjamas are looking to mortar strike the actual site. A little bit of damage dealt to Shepard, but that's about all she wrote. Ninjas in Pyjamas still needs to get something done on the actual map.
Yeah, over halfway through the round, less than a minute remaining here now, and we've really had a whole lot of nothing happen for NIP except for just now starting to see them move in for this lobby control. A great swing coming up from Joystick up the Cool Vibe stairs, and at 45 seconds, they'll claim the first kill against a very important player, Muzi. Psycho does trade that one back out, however, against Shepard. Oh, and he's going to be able to carry it forward further as well. A second picked up from him as he finds Dan leaning in by the kitchen window. He's ready for a third also as another player from Empire is ready to challenge over by that doorway. Scyther will now get dropped in a separate fight, and suddenly Empire looking a whole lot weaker here due to NIP taking a slow approach. But before Scyther can be finished off, we do see Always sneak off the kill. Kamikaze and Pino, though, clean up shop immediately after that. And finally, NIP find themselves a confident win to get on the board.
Yeah, so very awkward for Empire there inside of the dying moments. I mean, this is something that we've seen from Ninjas in Pyjamas pretty often, is when they hit an obstacle, they tend to just start walking at things. And that's exactly what we're going to see inside of this round. They are able to gather the actual lobby control, and you can see how Empire stacked over towards the jungle side of Kitchen. And this just allows Psycho to walk right in through stalls, not only pick up Shepard, who's looking on the complete opposite side of the rotation, but also kill the re-entry that's trying to come back in through Kitchen. And that's just so much damage already dealt to Empire. And you can see how they're also trying to fight back in a certain capacity, especially with a player inside of security, but that didn't matter either. Ninjas in Pyjamas are used to that being played, and they're assuming there's a body in there. They assume correctly, they get another frag, and then what do you do from that moment?
Well, now Now Empire gonna have to quickly look for the capability to rebound here. Relying a little bit on their earlier advances. We saw them cool it off a little bit, and again with good reason behind that, trying to add more variance to their early round play. And on top of the fact that if you look at their matches, as well as NIP's matches from yesterday, the entry stats were really nothing to be impressed by on either team. So Empire cannot necessarily rely on their early round aggression to get them the outright advantage to win, because NIP is on fairly even turf with them in that statistical category at this point of the tournament.
Yeah, I also think that it also comes down to recognizing what Nip want to do in the last minute when it comes down to a round like that. That's something that as Empire you have to be able to identify and know that they're going to go for something very similar to that, because they've been doing it for quite some time now. So we'll have to see what Empire can possibly do, and if they're going to be ready for Nip to try and throw it at the site later on, or try and creep in and get some frags in an unexpected place. Either way, Empire once again spread out across this map, and this is what we like to see. We want to continue to see this from Empire. Hold that space, force Ninjas in Pyjamas to take it from you, dwindle this timer, and just put them into a poor execute if you can. If you can deal some damage or take a body as well, then that's even greater to your overall success to the round.
So taking a look here at what's going on inside of our first opening seconds. Not a whole lot to write home about here, but we are actually going to see Muzi get a surprising amount of control over here towards VIP. Empire playing ignorance to that as they believe reinforce the no reinforcements as far as I can tell on either of the left side walls there either. So he's going to leave that right open for the taking, as the extended setup here will be left quite vulnerable. And as well, Empire won't even really be taking up position towards it. So they are going to let NIP potentially take that early on. They'll have to be careful of the re-advance that we've already seen a few times from Empire back up towards that. It doesn't seem like NIP are necessarily going to keep a whole lot of pressure here long term, however. Already shifting a few players away from that. Now the attention shifts over here towards the main stairs, where Julio has obviously just jumped in on the second floor window, and he does have, as you can see, always sitting a couple feet below him right now, possibly ready to take the fight in a few moments' time.
Well, Nip with top floor control. We can see that Empire was setting them some things up top to make it difficult to play around this hookah hatch, but I don't necessarily think that they're actually going to be able to get the re-aggression up top. I think this is going to be a lot of Nip just taking control of this and allowing Pino to do some quite serious work. You can see Muzi's worried about vibes, and White Stairs has already been locked up as well by Nip, so really nothing Empire can do. Joystick can possibly win this out with the M590 if somebody does want to try and aggress onto vibes, but even if he tries to swing for the base player, Muzi should more than likely win that. Now going down into the last minute here as Ninjas in Pyjamas is trying to break things up and look for the Sunrise plant.
Minute remaining here, and as you said before, NIP with full control upstairs will be very hard to see the re-aggression, but despite that fact, still going to keep the pressure from Joystick sitting over on the cool vibe stairs, ready to take a challenge against any overzealous member of NIP that might try to leap down the stairs without first checking it. So Joystick actually finding that not a whole lot going on here. You could see building up the courage slowly to maybe even self-check it himself, as he could potentially swing up there, but the Gemini now starting to work itself in through the pool door, and that's usually the siren call for what is going to be the execute following very shortly after that, and we can already see Psycho as well as Kamikaze trying to get in position to justify that, just taking out a couple pieces of extra utility from up on top due to the good work coming in from Pino here. He will be out of nades, but on top of that, Empire will be out of positioning inside of the site to play into, as you can see. Now relying on just the ranged utility they have. Psycho finally gonna get the first kill at 15 seconds left here against Scyther. Rest of the team ready to hold off against it. Here come the swings though, as Scyther now gets himself a second against Dan as well, but time very low. We need that plant to come down on the ground. No sign of it as of yet, and time's just gonna run out. Empire walks away with an easy one there, as they don't have to do a whole lot to hold it off.
It actually wasn't that. Shepard had the perfect timing on the smoke. He tossed it in and set it off as soon as that 10-second marker hit, which was just beautiful. Ninjas in Pyjamas tried to re-aggress, if you guys saw Kamikaze, dipping in and dipping out of mud, trying to see if he could possibly get the timing, but Shepard just played that so very well. That's exactly what you want to see out of your smoke player, and Empire up 4 rounds.
So Empire once again quickly retaking control by just playing the passive game, baiting out pretty much all the time. They're
what a round, honestly.
Yeah, never giving NIP an inch of vision on a single member of Empire, and never over-aggressing, never stepping too far out into a fight that could have potentially given Empire advantage, but also could have potentially lost Empire a player or two there and put them behind. They played to the defensive side of this game pretty much perfectly there, and NIP just didn't have enough aggression to counter it out.
Yeah, you could see Empire was also really worried about Nip possibly trying to go for an entry over towards the servers or lobby area as well. All of Empire minus our SAS ops are extended out towards that east side to make sure that that won't happen. That allows Shepard to do his job and do it in such convincing fashion. So now for NIP, 3-round deficit now on the offensive side here for Coast, as they can simply not get anything to go. They're able to obviously muster a singular round, but these last couple, especially that last one, I really don't like what we're seeing out of Ninjas and Pyjamas in the moment. Really no aggression, nothing trying to come on to the Empire players and actually take bodies. We're just not really seeing any action out of them.
So we'll go into the final round of the opening half here with Empire well under control here. Worst case, going to be a 4-2 if we see the counter now come in from NIP. But of course, Empire already going back to where we saw them control his site earlier. It's going to be back upstairs one final time in Hookah. We've got a more aggressive Always here, leaned out over by one of the windows, over by the front door, trying to see if he can maybe catch an unwilling member of NIP. Lurking up towards that, trying to take up additional positioning. Looking a bit unlikely. There was only Psycho in the area, and his focus seems to be a bit more concerned over towards the big window or possibly the service entrance. Still another player working with him for that as well. There is going to be some resistance towards service here too, as you can see Dan giving himself an extended position to play towards over here. Even a reinforcement to assist with it as well, and the magnets too being thrown out. So he'll be trying to maintain this position with some additional support, I think, sitting a little bit further back towards the kitchen door and bottom cool vibes area.
It's very similar to what we've been seeing Empire play this map like the entire time. Dan going to be on a forward position once again here inside of service. The pre-fire to the wall almost catching him, and also Dan missing a body because of that. So perfectly timed there from Muzi to allow Psycho to go in. And although it doesn't seem like it's practice, it most definitely is, but so is that Always. He's been occupying this space the entire time, and so is Dan, as we just talked about previously. But Ninjas and Pyjamas, this is what we like to see. They'll double down on it, and they'll be able to refrag with Shepard and Joystick falling.
The refrags coming in here from NIP are amazing in how they're saving themselves at the outset of these rounds here, seeming like Empire is going to take massive advantage when suddenly NIP picks up the trades out of absolutely nowhere. That's the kind of confidence that was unfortunately missing in the previous round here, but it's good to see it returning for the 6th and final attacking round for them inside this half here. So going to see them start to deploy down the VIP hallway. Relatively scot-free, no resistance coming in at any point there from Empire. That'll allow them to chuck in some nades and start to open things up as well for themselves to give them better POV on the site as we get closer and closer to the end of the round here. Still a little under half of it to go though, so plenty of time for NIP to bait out and analyze things. Drone count, unfortunately, getting a little bit low, so Intel might be starting to lapse itself a bit, but as you can see, Kamikaze nearly getting himself into exchange with Dan. Dan's at low HP though. He makes a smart choice here and backs away into a safer position.
Dan's going to re-aggress over towards VIP, a much smarter choice here as luggage is quite scary at the moment with Julio occupying the Aqua balcony as well as Kamikaze inside of this space. You can see they're trying to set up for the default plan in the moment, but this is also going to read very well for Empire's side in the moment. Scyther Nitro Cell in his pocket as well. We could see the adjustment down low here from Dan. Does still have that impact, but it's really up to Empire. And actually what Nip can do now, since Julio's been taken out, there's that impact from Dan to clean it up, and they just have to go for the frags now. Not very much time. They'll be able to remove Scyther, but Dan fires back onto Kamikaze. It's a triple for him as he looks for the quad. Pino outside on the balcony, and now it's down to the 1 versus 1. You love to see it. Very minimal time here as Pino needs to pick up the case and plant this, and he's going to need to do it immediately as soon as he picks that up. Big problem now is there's a bulletproof on that wall. He's going to be able to read out a lot of what's going on. He'll destroy that and immediately go for the plant, as right when this hits 0-0, Dan will be able to hop too, but Pino will actually be able to get up as well because of the time. Look at how this is breaking down. Dan moving forward for the hookah rotation now. Pre-fires the wall, knows that he's moved off towards Aqua. Dan with very minimal HP though. This could go either way.
Plant timing for Pino was absolutely perfect there. It was far enough up to allow him to get it before it hit the null timer, and as well, it was close enough to the end where Dan thought he might have tried to bait it there. Pino, though, is going to be able to line up that final shot and shut it down due to the massive HP advantage he has in that skirmish there. Beautifully played by Pino as NIP sneak in a second round for themselves at the end of the half.
Pretty scary sight there for both sides. Definitely could have went either way, but Empire's more than likely pretty happy with how that half went. A 4-2 split coming into the offensive side now for them. Definitely in the driver's seat here. We'll see if they can keep their pacing up on this offensive half.
Indeed, that'll be the case. The 4-2 advantage, the world will be their oyster. And as well, with the good capability to kind of bait out the time here, we're going to have to see how well they'll be able to do that inside of their attacking side as well, and how Nip will now try to traverse it. Will they go hyper-aggressive, as we've often seen Latin American teams do on this map, or will they try to play this cool, calm, a little bit confusing as well to try and throw Empire off and get them some of those early picks that they can then leverage into an easy advantage in the late run. Either way, we'll be starting out for NIP on a kitchen hole, the same way that we saw our friends over on Empire starting out their half as well, so going to be rerunning these sites one more time.
Yes, indeed. And for Nip, The confusion more than likely going to be paramount here, especially with this operator lineup that they're bringing. Not only Kamikaze with the alibis like we saw from Empire, but also Muzi bringing Oryx and Psycho with this war. And there's a lot of different ways that they could throw some curveballs at Empire, especially if Empire wants to abuse things like the smokes that Scyther could possibly be carrying. But we'll have to see once we get to that moment here, is more than likely Nip just worried about what could possibly go down on site.
We have some similarities for Empire's composition in terms of what NIP was bringing to the table too, with the big switch up obviously being Dan bringing the Finka to the table now and adding those adrenal surges, that ranged revive, as well as a health boost that can come in and help out our attackers should things get a little bit dodgy. Other than that though, very similar Flare coming in, the Sledge obviously getting exchanged out for a buck. We still have the Yana, the Hibana, and the Twitch in play here for Empire, which I believe was present on NIP's lineup also.
Quite a few teams starting to take out Finka instead of the ban phase as well here. I think we saw it 2 or 3 times yesterday, and that's just because of the buff that she's received. She's actually so strong for your team to have a hold of, especially with her LMG in hand, with those frag grenades and everything else. Dan's actually going to end up using the spear here, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The spear's still a great rifle. The only difference obviously being the massive difference in bullets that you carry per magazine, but you still have those adrenal surges, and it still works in the same way to not only pick your team up, but also keep them healthy.
Drone sneaking up on Pino. I don't know if it got close enough to actually physically see him just as of yet, but may have just barely been able to do so. Couldn't obviously see the drone from Pino's POV, so there's a chance he missed it, but either way, it's clear enough here for Empire to get the confidence needed to start to swing in and take that hookah control for themselves. That is going to be a point they want to play for contention. Pino, though, will contest that. As you can see, he takes up position just by the blue bar window here. And there's a couple members of Empire still sitting outside by the ruins and that hookah staircase, which they're going to have to try and traverse if they want the upstairs control. You can see, though, Psycho, he's seen it now. He's seen it now. The drone moves in, and thankfully for him, it's just going to be the Gemini, so it throws him off a little bit as the crouch was moving. It threw me off as well, as I was confused why the Gemini would be crouching in. But either way, Psycho going to be forced out of position as a result of that, and now play from behind the couch. And a great catch, as it's perfect positioning to fend off the actual push from Joystick now and get him the first kill in the round.
They had the initial info, but always didn't have the read on the adjustment to the couch, and that's what catches Joystick off guard as he's trying to work in for the bar space. But obviously, nobody home. Great stuff here from Nip as he'll be able to pick up the initial frag, and now Empire running into a lot of the same obstacles that Ninjas in Pyjamas did with clearing the map and actually trying to get control and looking for these picks. Seems like the defensive favored Coastline is what we'll be getting here today, as Empire stunted for growth right now. Dan trying to work in towards office, always sitting outside blue. Where exactly do they go? Well, the Case currently sitting outside of the kitchen window. Lots of different cross angles to worry about, always now working inside of Sunrise. Quite a few Ninjas in Pyjamas members over towards his right-hand side, which is all the povs that you literally just saw. Pino will still be holding things on here inside of blue. He'll have the cross here as well, but they know that he's inside of this space.
Shepard able to walk in against Kamikaze, and that's after Always nearly loses his life. Pino with the amazing cutoff from blue that no one's paying attention to initially. Thankfully, it's a quick exchange from Scyther, though, as Empire win that fight with mass more than anything else there. Still going to be another member resisting them on the blue side. It's going to be inside of office currently, though. Julio not ready to immediately prevent this. He's going to wait the timeout here, wait for this to get too chaotic, and then swing in from the backside in hopes that he can just run right up and execute the rest of the setup. That may not necessarily happen, though. Dan tears his way through both of the remaining members of NIP, and the Case goes down with no problem whatsoever. Julio's flank has been read into, as you guys probably noticed before as well. They kept someone over by the Cool Vibe stairs to watch out for that. So Julio has no clean way to pick up a kill here, even goes, and it's a good read here, as you can see, towards the outside window to see if maybe he could catch a member of Empire that had gone out the kitchen window. But no one made the step that far because they had no reason to. There's no pressure in the site anymore, and it's just going to be an easy closeout for that flank watch. Scyther, who was already placing himself in that position to get ready for that push.
Incredible round there from Empire, and very much needed. It was not looking to swell when it came to their Sunrise take initially. A lot of bodies being lost to the Sunrise player that eventually became the blue player, and then Julio obviously with a ill-informed flank. He thought that he had it on the timing. As you were saying, John, wait till it gets chaotic, and that's really what you want to do on those flanks. You don't want to just try and give your body up for no reason. You want Empire to be forced into that plant, and then you're just the cloak and dagger coming right from the rear, take them all out. So either way, now for Ninjas in Pyjamas, you have to be really worried, especially with the way that Empire was able to adjust on that offensive side. I really like that they had the Case preemptively dropped outside the kitchen window. That was all premeditated. Fantastic stuff from them. We'll see if they can get it done again here, but it's really going to come down to the early picks and the translations of those that we're going to be able to see here. Obviously, Nip able to pick up the initial one, but past that, it really wasn't that big of an assist. They were able to, yes, get the next kill from Empire, Empire, but they weren't ready for the push onto site, just like Empire wasn't ready for Nip to push the site initially on Kitchen as well.
So once again, we'll continue to move through these rounds and move through these sites in a very similar way, as we'll see NIP take on the same exact rotation, so far anyway, that Empire went for inside of their own defensive half. Starting out with Kitchen and now moving over towards the double bars. They will take a very similar, very different operator lineup going to be coming in for them, though. Lots of mobility inside of this one here. We're going to have the Malusi, obviously again the Oryx also to get all over the map at a moment's notice. And then aside from that, things fall much more focused on the site, as we'll have both a Mira as well as the Smoke playing back into that.
Well, a little late site setup here for Kamikaze, is nobody knocking any holes inside of blue, and Dan with a big pickup. I don't know if that was inside of the bathroom or what here. Doesn't look like it was inside of lobby. Did he catch him inside of stalls? No, I don't know exactly where this body ended up going down, but either way, that's Muzi off the board. There he is. He's on white stairs. It makes a lot more sense there. Pre-fire coming in from Dan over towards that space. Gonna end up claiming a life, and now Ninjas in Pyjamas on the back foot, but that doesn't mean they're gonna slow down. In fact, Pino, he's already outside. He's gonna take some damage for it, but luckily the dashes of Oryx will keep him alive.
Just barely, though, as he's still going to take a good chunk of damage on the way out there, getting spotted out a bit too early, unfortunately, over by the VIP repel here. Meanwhile, Joystick just working on deleting some utility real quickly, and actually I believe it sneaks some damage off on a Kamikaze as well, as he's trying to take out a player entirely. Have to be careful, though. He's recently lost his utility support, and I don't believe he has anything in terms of utility mitigation, because we don't have any operators that can account for that. So, unfortunately, we'll have to back away from that position, fearing the potential second nade to come in at any second. Good news for him, though, is the fact that Joystick, as you guys can see on the right side of your screen, obviously out of those, so it'd have to be Dan or another player to get in a position to do that.
Aggressive showing here from Kamikaze as well, as he was trying to work his way up into mud, and oh, the timing for Kamikaze. You have to feel for him in the moment, but luckily enough, Psycho will find one of his own. Might be too little too late, though. A lot of the round still remains, and plenty of time for Empire to work this top floor and really start to abuse Sunrise for everything it's worth. Dan continuing to work the mudroom space as well. Knows this one is more than likely inside of the bar area. Another nade in, and it's going to deal another chunk of damage to Pino. Now down to a single bullet's worth of HP.
Seemingly a war of attrition that Empire has full advantage over because of their early picks that they had found specifically for Dan, and now 3 picks total in this round as he gets himself another one, finally finishing off Pino, hiding out behind the Sunrise bar. Julio desperately looking for the angle, needed to trade on against this, but it's going to come from Psycho instead. One and done for him now, though. His quad kill is picked up for Dan against Psycho. He's going to potentially try and go for the ace also, just has to isolate out Julio on the inside of blue bar. They'll know where he is now because of the direction from that smoke toss, and it's not unfortunately even going to be able to interrupt the plant. Does a little bit of damage to some of our players here, and Julio, a nice catch as he does indeed absolutely grab Scyther after he jumps out the window, but at this point, the members of Empire have no reason to force the issue against Julio here. 30 seconds, just have to wait it out, and at that point, the round will go into their pocket regardless of the outcome of the 1v2 here. So they're going to play that very, very passively, just wait down this timer, even backing away as you saw there a few seconds ago from Julius. There was a player positioned upstairs a few seconds ago. He's lost the plot, he's lost any hope of finding any of these players, and keep in mind, once we reach past about that 7-second point, it's impossible to counter defuse in time. So we've reached it now. That's it. That's the round. And once again, NIP, just nothing to do. Gonna hand the ace over to Dan on a silver platter. Very well played.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what a round from him. I mean, every single avenue that Dan could have abused there, he did. Top floor, mudroom, blue window, everything that he possibly could have done to Ninjas in Pyjamas, he did. Fantastic stuff from him, and definitely one that Empire are going to be very, very happy with. And I mean, I hate to say it, guys, but Ninjas in Pyjamas are looking like a shell of themselves in the moment. This is not good for our SI champions.
And meanwhile, Empire are looking fantastic, at least inside of this matchup right now, specifically when it comes to their early game. We didn't really see come out for them yesterday versus the Sonics, and they struggled quite a bit in that department. Dan right now is absolutely shredding it in the opening kills, as well as just general control for the map that this team is able to garner. And we are going to see a bit of a desperate pause come out here from NIP. It's a 2-6. They're going to try to rally themselves. Obviously, never a better time to use it than now, as this is very well could be your last chance. So we'll see what they're able to talk about here, what they're able to potentially adjust between the previous round and this one to maybe, just maybe, save themselves and push for 4 straight rounds that are needed to trigger OT.
That's going to be some hard talking points, because as of right now, Dan alone is sitting on the precipice of a 2.0 KPR. That is not supposed to be happening in the slightest, especially for a team like Ninjas in Pyjamas. So they're more than likely going to be going back to the drawing board and seeing what they can possibly produce inside of this this next round. Obviously still talking to their coach, so they still got some things to figure out. As of right now, they're locked into kitchen service, and they weren't there for a little bit. It was contested for just a moment, so more than likely seeing exactly what they can bring to the table in this round is they need to guarantee 4 for overtime.
Let's see if they're going to be able to get this done. The pause has now concluded, so we'll be heading back in just a moment here and seeing if there's any hope whatsoever for the NIP roster to garner themselves back into this matchup, find themselves some fighting shape, find some of that aggression that we had seen earlier on in this matchup, but NIP seem to be a shell of their former selves in that respect, playing very, very passively here, kind of waiting this out and allowing for Empire to make quite a few plays against them. It's going to be going back as well towards a kitchen hold. I will say that initially in the pause, it was looking like they were wanting to go for a penthouse hold, but it's since switched from that. So even some uneasiness from NIP in terms of where they want to take the site choice, it seems.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of those conversations that you just have to have during that timeout and see what necessarily you can do to mess with Empire inside of this round, because a lot of this Coastline has been Empire setting the pace and NIP trying to have an answer for that. Even in the rounds that Ninjas in Pyjamas found success, Empire still accomplished so very much. So it's really difficult for the NIP camp right now as they're trying to get something to work on this Rubik's Cube of a map, it seems.
And unfortunately, they will potentially be in for a bit of a rough time on the second map as well. Just pulling up some stats here to look at. Well, yes, our second map for Kafe looks very good on paper in terms of an overall win ratio for NIP at 2-2 for most recent plays. Important to note as well that opponents have banned that map 19 times against them. But when you look a little bit deeper at the stats, it's a little bit vulnerable as they only have a 38% round win ratio, or percentage rather, on that map. So a bit of an uneasy pick, at least in my book, looking at the stats for NIP going into our second map. Could very well be looking at Empire on the warpath towards a quick 2-0 here if NIP don't give us something new on that second map.
Especially with the way that Empire have been managing their utility game as well. I mean, it's looked very, very successful thus far, and Kafe is a map that breeds good utility usage. So we should be seeing Empire finding some pretty serious success once we get there, but we'll have to cross that bridge later on. We still possibly have some very serious rounds to cover here in Coast, and with 1 minute off the board already, Team Empire looking to strike and win this in 7-2 fashion. Psycho will be playing over inside of Sunrise as of right now, so this is looking very similar to what NIP did previously on their kitchen defense.
Psycho continuing to maintain just a bit of a pixel angle to try and immediately fend off any pushes from Empire that would come in through the pool door. If there's anyone that could do it, it's him as well. We have seen some very impressive kind of instant snapshot headshots coming out from him over the course of this series. Julio is going to be the one to take on the challenge at the opener, and unfortunately he's up against the most lethal player from Empire here, Dan.
Oh no.
And always both getting kills. The nade goes in, and from the grave, Dan will be able to take out Muzi. He does get caught with his pants down throwing that nade, but hey, at least he trades out the very same player that took him down. And just like that, we're down to 1 and we're down to 0 as Empire wastes no time closing down this final round and shutting down this first map.
Yeah, shutting down is the perfect way to put that, John, because Ninjas in Pyjamas seemed like they weren't even in the server. They take the tack time out, discuss everything, and then still get waxed. I mean, that's just a very, very rough showing for Ninjas in Pyjamas.
I will say things looked okay for them within our first couple rounds, but once again, NIP with just so much hesitation to any type of playmaking that we were going to get out of them. We saw them trying to go for it in the first few rounds, but then it just evaporated entirely as we got towards the 4th and 5th rounds and obviously further into the matchup past that. We need to see more of that. We need to see them trying to dictate the pace of the game because that only grew Empire's own confidence, as well as Dan specifically. We saw him getting bolder and bolder as that map went onwards, and at least his opening kill ratio continued to go up and up and up as a direct result of that. So NIP needing to find their footing very quickly, as if not, we could be looking at a fast 2-0 in Empire's favor.
Absolutely. Dan with 17 kills on that map. Truly incredible stuff. But guys, we are not going to hold you any longer. We want to get into the second map as quickly as you do. So we're going to send you to a little break and we'll be back with map 2 between Empire and Ninjas in Pyjamas.
And we are back once again, ladies and gentlemen. The big question that we need to answer first is, are NIP now going to bounce back as well? As unfortunately, for the most part, they were a bit of a no-show in that first map there. At least after the first few rounds, didn't see a whole lot coming out of them, and it was Empire domination, especially from Dan as he was able to rip his way through. We realized this as well when we were on break. The first ace of the tournament. Big congratulations to him as he's able to take that at a later point during that map and continue to dominate, allowing for Empire to swiftly take control of their second half and the map as well.
Yeah, it's got to be the Bionicle he always brings to land, man. Every single time that I see Dan, that's the thing I look at on that desk. It's just a good nostalgia trip for me, you know, going back in the day when I was little old Stokesy. But speaking of things that are way more important than that, Team Empire and Ninjas in Pyjamas, and what happened on Coastline, John, because it was a bloodbath, especially if you look at Dan's stat line.
I mean, for me, I was explaining it in the postgame there. I just saw NIP completely lose most, if not all, of their confidence to make plays. We even saw that at the tail end of their attack there. We had a round where, unfortunately, they weren't even able to bait out the smokes properly and just had to kind of waltz into the site and never even really properly put the plant down because it would have led to the suicide of the planter because of the smoke sitting there. Very, very similar scenarios played out on at least 2 other rounds, and unfortunately became a symptom of how NIP were able to drop so many, especially later on there, and led to this very dominant scoreline. So now we have to hope they can rebound going into Kafe, but I talked about this in the middle of our last map as well. Only a 30% or so round win rate for NIP going into this map, so we're going to have to hope they prepared something new for this one heading into SI.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, this is also the map that Nip played against Sandbox yesterday where they got bodied. Sandbox just looks so good on this map, and Ninjas in Pyjamas, not so much. I'm really worried coming into this one.
Yeah, absolutely the case here. Empire, in the meantime, no reason for them to be worried as the 3 players that are able to play in the venue right now just sitting nice, cool, calm, and collected over in their station, waiting for the game to get started, which should be happening in just a second or 2 here, folks. Just giving our players one final moment to compose themselves, get themselves ready for any final changes they may want to make, any final discussions they need to have. Then we will dive deep into Kafe to see if, once again, NIP will be able to muster the strength to bounce back into this one, or if Empire will continue to dominate here, as they are already up with a nice series in their pocket being taken against the Sonics yesterday. Now going to look for a second one here against NIP. That will leave them in a very confident position inside of this group if they're able to take that there with 2 wins against some of the most competitive teams in their group, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially with 2 of their players under COVID protocol as well. I mean, you know, very difficult for them to play the way that they want to, like you and I were talking about before. Not having everybody on your bench, especially for someone like Shepard that is so prominent in that support role. You want him there and being able to see what everybody else is doing beside him, but it doesn't seem like it's affecting them that much at the end of the day.
I want to be honest with you, too. It's also like, all right, you come here, you expect to play like on a big stage, on a big LAN, and now you're playing in a hotel room with, with like a computer that we like rushed into your room and all that. So it's a bit of a buzzkill, I'd imagine. At least it would be for me.
And like the worst office chair.
Obviously, again, you know, not much you can do about it considering the circumstances, but they're certainly making the best of it over on the Empire side of things as we get into our second map and see how exactly this is going to play out. As we already start things out with an interesting ban, one that certainly makes sense, though. Flores has become a mainstay for utility clear specifically on this map. So let's knock him right out and remove that potential tool from the attacker stature as well. That's been a mainstay in our meta for quite some time, so no surprises there.
An insane operator that Ubisoft provided us, most definitely, because he is the only one that can get rid of utility in the way that he does. He has an explosion on a drone. For everybody else, they have to throw things at the actual shield or whatever they want to clear, and that gets eaten up by ADSs and my discs and whatever else. The only counter to Flores, a mute jammer or you shoot it. And usually people are not playing mute jammers around shield, so Flores has a pretty direct route to getting rid of a lot of these setups that the defense will end up having. But the rest of these bans, folks, they just make so much sense for Kafe. Thatcher, Valkyrie, and Mira all off the board.
And I'll be honest with you, usually people aren't shooting those drones either. They have a very good track record of being able to sneak in and quickly get, at minimum, the explosion off to take out a shield or 2, which might be a couple inches in front of one of our players here.
The drone jukes are just insane. I'm telling you, that's something that you develop over time as a Siege player. You get those nice little drone jukes down. If you guys don't know, you can actually abuse your hop. If you look right down at the floor and jump, then it will actually launch your drone forward instead of, you know, going up in the air or whatever. So it's a nice little speed boost. You can, you know, break people people's ankles with that and try and keep those drones alive. And that's really what you're looking to do. Information's extremely important, but Flores is importanter.
All right, so let's see how the lack of Flores will potentially affect Empire and eventually NIPs. They'll be jumping onto the attack in our second half here, but Empire is in the hot seat initially. As once again, the defense generally being favored on this one. I think as far as our tournament stats are concerned right now, though, it's not necessarily the case. You and I were looking at it earlier. I'm pretty sure the defense is like a 40% win rate or something like that on this map right now. Obviously, you can confirm it in a second here, but it's a bit of a skewed tournament in that respect, actually. Quite a few maps are flip-flopped right now, so we'll have to follow that closely as we continue further and further into the tournament.
45% win rate, my friend. And the funniest one of all, 21 attempts on Bar Cocktail. It's got a 29% defensive win rate, which is the site we're on right now.
Absolutely the case here. And once again, a large part of that reason is, I want to be honest, this site feels like it's kind of played out in a lot of ways. It feels like teams have really stretched the strategy out on this one as far as it can go, and that means that attackers pretty much know what to expect 99% of the time here and have plenty of experience of being able to clear it out as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is just, this is the site that you have to be able to clear. So every single team, that's their standard for Kafe if they're going to go to this, is being able to clear this top floor as well as kitchen downstairs. Those are going to be some pretty big things. But this top floor plays into a lot of things because of it playing into the mid-level sites. You really want to be able to understand the top floor of Kafe quite a bit and be able to synergize with your team well in your ability to clear this space. Now, for Ninjas in Pyjamas, they are going to be setting this up in not the most traditional way, but one that we see quite often here with the castle barricade set up to make sure they can protect their player inside of Cigar and hold that space for a while longer. Now, the other thing for Ninjas in Pyjamas that they have going on is no pixel pressure. That's the other thing. But Psycho, he's obviously going to be able to rotate in and out of this space. Seems like he might be able to get one here on the actual stage window. They do swing back in, but oh no, the cutoff from Dan. Psycho, he's gotten overzealous and he's lost his life.
Psycho, unfortunately, tunnel visioning on that one player. They're not accounting for alternate angles that Empire could have taken up. That's going to be Dan continuing his opening kill rampage as well as he adds another +1 to that one, being able to take out Psycho. Not the start that NIP wanted here. They're not done just yet. Still plenty of pressure they can throw even from the inside of this bathroom area back out towards those very same windows. So Empire, well, yes, they've gotten the opening kill. They still have plenty of work to do in terms of map control here.
And Dan, not rocking the ARX either, bringing in the AK with a couple magazines that we don't get to see, in the hands of Nomad too often just because of how prominent the ARX is overall, but no slouch of a rifle either. Got some extra bullets inside of that magazine and a little bit of a slower fire rate there. So either way, Empire doing a very bang-up job of propelling themselves forward. Joystick will start to get control here inside of Ticket, and quite the quiet map for him on the initial one, but mostly just because a lot of the kills were being soaked up by Dan.
Absolutely the case here. Mosey continuing to bait out time and continuing to look for a potential contention against the push in from Red Drop. Not going to see anyone really swing out against him, though, so he is successfully holding on to that. And Empire are unfortunately slowly running out of time here. Only that first kill against Psycho so far to write home about in terms of any advantage they've gained. They are sitting back, hoping someone will peek out, and as well waiting for that potential opening kill to really start this execute forward, always with another nice frag from below to take out Pino and pull the advantage up to a 5v3. Gonna find another one, too. I can't even finish my sentence. There we go. They just execute them all one by one by one, and Empire give us a very dominating stance on their opening attacking round here.
Not too much conversation going on here for NIP either. Obviously have, I can't remember. I believe it's Kamikaze in the center. I can't necessarily remember off the top of my head right now, face-wise. But either way, just a conversation going in between the two. And, I mean, that's really it. For Ninjas in Pyjamas, they're just playing very scared inside of sight. They don't know where any of these members are. There's zero information and zero will for Ninjas in Pyjamas to actually exert pressure around the map. The only thing that we saw was Psycho with that misplay inside of Christmas, and then past that, Ninjas in Pyjamas is getting dusted across the board. Frag grenades coming in from down low and everything of the sort.
Bold choice to go back to this site as well, in my opinion, from NIP here. They're going to waste no time immediately re-picking that one and trying this out a second time to see if a new strategy or a new lease on this site will maybe be what they need to control it here, with the very one-sided nature of how Empire were able to control it. To be fair, only showing up those last 30 seconds or so as Empire was kind of given the keys to the kingdom, specifically in the main bar itself towards the middle of this floor. There seemed to be no resistance from NIP inside of the usual areas such as that cocktail wall So they were able to walk right in. At least their first kill was just free for the taking as they had an angle against the player in Freezer with no counter to it.
Yeah, it was actually Psycho and Kamikaze. They were having a little bit of a discussion there as they were talking back and forth and seeing what they can possibly do for this next round. But past that, very quiet on the NIP bench, and that does not bode well. When you talk about LATAM teams, we're talking about energy. We're talking about them being loud and proud in the way that they're playing the game, and that is not happening for Ninjas in Pyjamas in the current moment.
We see a couple drones get dispatched of here inside of the prep phase, but as we move through that, not going to be a huge deficit, only 2 of them being knocked out, still plenty in excess for Empire to utilize here, as Empire's looking once again for a quick path in, maybe a little bit quicker this time, although once again, a fairly confident win from them when everything was said and done, so maybe they're perfectly fine to just rerun this exactly the same way once again. In terms of operator picks, it's going to be very much that here, as they bring a very similar flair to the table, and aside from that, a very similar opener as well, as they're putting a lot of presence on those Christmas repels while they drone things out.
I mean, it's really not that much of a change here, all except for Julio. This is the answer that they have for always coming in down low with the frag grenade, is just Julio playing this space down here. But Empire should drone this before they come downstairs, because if they don't, then they're just playing the game incorrectly. I'll just put it that way for you. As for NIP, though, they're going to be playing very far back inside of the site. This is going to allow Empire not only Christmas control, but also Cigar as soon as they drone out that information. It should be fairly straightforward. There's no mute jammers in play here, so nothing to deny information away from Empire, and you can see that right now as they've already started to muster some space over here on the west side.
See Pino getting himself a slight engagement on the cross against a member of Empire. Reaction just a little bit too slow, so not going to be able to catch any serious damage. A lot of utility being exchanged here as Empire throw the opening volley of their flashes and whatnot into the specifically freezer, as well as that bathroom area to try and flush those players out. Not with too much success, unfortunately, as you're going to see NIP continue to maintain those positions, and obviously, as you guys have probably noticed by this point, no opening kill for Empire either. NIP playing a lot more passive, a lot more locked into their setup, which is potentially going to allow for them to fight better against this execute that Empire will be forced to go for if they continue to bait out the time. Nade's coming in from up on top this time, rolls into the freezer. It's a minimal health effect, might have been used to take out a piece of utility or two, however.
I think the Electro Claw is actually still there. No, it did end up getting it, so they'll be able to get the freezer wall open, and that's exactly why Psycho's playing inside of this space. But with the newfound holes that will be inside of the freezer area, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to hold on to this, but that's the entire point of him locking this down here. He's going to try and play out his life and see if he can deal some damage, but damage has already been dealt. It's on the joystick as he'll go down here, and that'll be NIP with their very first pick of the entirety of the game. This is the first kill that they've gotten.
We're going to see Muzi move in there, and despite a teammate getting hit by an air jab, Muzi able to still negotiate a second kill against Dan. Very well done, and a much better strategy coming out here this time from NIP to hold it back. Finally, the passive play is working into their favor, specifically on this third floor hold. The first exchange did come in from Empire, but it's unfortunately not a huge amount of impact at this point, especially with Scyther having most of his HP ripped right off here. Kamikaze steals away one of his teammates.
Oh, no.
Scyther will be finished off, and now Shepard's got nowhere to go except right into Pino's crosshair. That's a solid response coming out from NIP, and they quickly tie us up at 1-1.
That's what you want to see out of Ninjas in Pyjamas. The way that they played around Kaid, especially inside of Freezer, boded extremely well for them. Able to get the early picks there, Empire fight back in a certain capacity, but obviously it wasn't enough. We get the initial pick there from Shepard, but then that's really all that was dealt back in order for Ninjas in Pyjamas to take that round. So those shift up not only away from the bar side and raise that stat that Kafe definitely needs on that top floor, but they'll also be shifting things down towards Reading Room and Fireplace Hall. Kamikaze will initially show the pulse, so obviously Empire are going to have to be worried about that, but he'll 6-pick away and go to the Vigil.
I mean, technically, it's just backwards started at the beginning of this map, because
technically
they won the first round, so they've evened it back out. But but either way, we'll see, as they'll probably get one more chance to try that at some point later on in this half, especially with how favorably that whole...
Oh, yeah, because they lost... Yeah,
So they won one and they lost one.
It's literally backwards.
Yeah, it took you a few moments to get that one.
I haven't eaten today, man.
Anyway.
I've had a croissant. The croissant was good, though. It was a good croissant.
Very good. We'll be getting lunch very quickly after this one. But as we look back once again at the new hold coming in from NIP, there is going to be still an extension up to the second floor. Reinforcements coming in. It's a very similar position. It actually looks like they want to play into possibly this Christmas hold or the bathroom hold a little bit for themselves here, even though we're going to be downstairs once again on the Reading Room play this time for NIP here. So curious to see how this potential even further extension out from the usual areas is going to work for the squad.
And Ninjas in Pyjamas with some peculiar secondary utility as well. Moosey won't be bringing the impacts, instead he'll be bringing the proximity sensors as well. So he'll have some info inside of that department that could possibly assist them in seeing what Empire want to do early on with the map. And like we talked about previously with the way that you're looking at Kafe from the offensive side of the coin, is that you really want to know what you're doing for this top floor clear. And this is exactly why. It may not be the top floor, but look at where everyone is and look at what the utility set up as. They need to hold on to this top floor, make sure the verticality cannot come in from Empire, and that's what they're going to look to abuse. If Nip can deal some serious damage to Empire early here, the round's done.
Empire prioritizing the intel game more than anything right now, as they do realize the threat on the third floor here and are going to hyper-focus with at least 3 players trying to look for a path into this third floor. But as you were mentioning, such a spread-out setup for NIP. There really isn't going to be a safe path to take some positioning here on the third floor. They'll have to fight someone from Nip no matter where they try to drop in from, so might have to just see someone go for it in a moment or two. Here the castle barricade over towards Cigar will get spotted by Joystick, and he'll use his Gone 6 to take care of that, but still, like I was saying, absolutely not enough confidence to hop right in there and try to take the control for himself. Kamikaze, however, is going to get droned out in that part of the map, so he'll be forced away from it and eventually forced down on the second floor. So Empire's still making a small amount of progress in clearing out things here on the third.
Halfway through the round now for Empire to continue progression and trying to apply this pressure towards Nip and back them off of the top floor, but you can see the amount of avenues that Nip also has blocked off, especially around this White Hall area. In tow with the bar space that they're currently holding from Cocktail, Empire will now spring to. Drones in here, be able to get rid of the mute jammer to clear up that other drone, but one working its way all the way across Long Bar, and will be able to read into Pino's location inside of Cocktail, but not before he removes the head of Shepard. And that'll knock the case down as well. This is getting quite drastic, but Joystick will be able to at least answer with a kill onto Kamikaze. Proximity sensor will give up his push here inside of White. Can the ARX get it done? He doesn't even tag him, but goes back both ways. He'll finally get taken out by Pino as he tries to aggress.
With a nice find initially against Shepard, and another smooth find as well, capitalizing on the play from Joystick as he was able to get away from the Whitehall fight. But unfortunately, there was a rotation and a freezer that gave him the angle he needed to shut him down as he moved further out. Dan, with a good catch against Julio, nearly finds him, and Muzi comes in for the assist, saves his teammate's life. Pino back in it with a third kill just in this round here, and now only one remaining for Empire. Scyther against the world, and he can't get it done. Pino gets the quad, I believe, going for him inside of that round, and another good one is picked up by NIP.
Fantastic round there from Pino with the ump of everything around of all the guns he could have possibly have had there. Either way, that 1.5 getting it done at the end of the day, and Ninjas in Pyjamas will pull ahead for the very first time inside of this series.
See that opener once again from Pino as he started things out well, and really things continue to go well for specifically him, but as well the rest of NIP. Like we were talking about earlier in the round, Empire was struggling to clear out that third floor extension, and while eventually around the minute-and-a-half mark or so, they were able to clear out the more aggressive player position over by Cigar just by kind of flashing and droning him out. They weren't really able to put much pressure at all on that usual position extended over towards Cocktail, and those players, specifically Pino, were really able to rip open most of the attack that was eventually coming in from Empire. So NIP just continue to rotate through their sights, and we're going to be back down to the first floor hold.
Well, kitchen for the very first time here for Ninjas in Pyjamas. We'll see what they want to do with this. They're going to have the rotation into bakery, so it looks like we're going to have some bakery plays, boys and girls. Yay! Can also see some things going out towards Coat Check, which is toward the north side of your screen. We see that room occupied pretty damn often just because of how important it is to the crossfire that you can have inside of the main kitchen space. As for everything else, though, it looks like it's just going to be extension after extension after extension, as we will have a player inside of VIP. This is something that we've grown to be accustomed to on Kafe. We haven't seen it that much recently inside of North America, but this is a strat that it still works. I mean, the map's the same. You can do really whatever you need in this space, and with Flores gone, it makes this strat a lot more viable.
So for Empire, starting to struggle a little bit here on the outset. Their second map in the series, a confident win back on map number 1. You guys can see the scoreline on the top right side of the screen, 7-2 in their favor. NIP has already picked up that many rounds here on their defensive side of our second map and is on a warpath to be able to claim a third for themselves. But it's a new site in play as well this time here. That doesn't necessarily mean we are going to get a new opener, but from the looks of it, it does appear once again here that for the most part, we are seeing NIP contain themselves to that first floor hold, and of course the bakery area that you were talking about earlier. Just one kind of lurking about here on the second and third floor to try and maybe get lucky and catch some of the initial pressure from Empire if they want to focus on the top-down clear.
Smooth and steady for both squads right now. This is going to require a lot of info game here from Empire. As you can see, the drone spinning up top. Joystick in to try and assist with this. Seeing if they can get away with as much as they possibly can on this top floor. A couple of mute jammers around the space, but it doesn't seem like there's too many people occupying the area that could possibly get him into trouble. But obviously Joystick doesn't know that, and will just continue to pre-fire things and make sure no one's creeping in the bathroom that could possibly place spoils to him trying to push up white.
See a very, very slow roll once again here for Empire. Worked for them when they had the huge amount of intel gained to assault the third floor back on the first round, but keep in mind it was also built up on the back of an opening kill they found for themselves due to an over-aggression from NIP. NIP immediately learned their lesson from that first round and haven't made that mistake since here. Dan, gonna throw out that air jab. I think it did get caught on the rafters, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yep, so that's gonna be one that's ultimately wasted a little bit here. And he'll have to throw a second one out if he wants to use it on those whiskey stairs.
It's really unfortunate for some reason Nip wants to go up to Newbauk and just gets knocked all the way back.
Yeah, I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah. There's really no reason for them to be there, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, you know what I mean? Nitro Cell out here to try and deal with Always, but he'll be able to stay alive here and continue to assist Dan in working these angles up top as that hammer continues to swing away at the floor. 40 seconds remain now for Team Empire as they're looking to bear down onto site, but Ninjas in Pyjamas have done such a bang-up job of holding on to site control and keeping these crosses alive. Julio now trying to step up and deal with the player upstairs, but he won't be able to do so. The plant now going down for Shepard, and where the hell is he? He's inside a bunker. Pino's got the answer, though, and they're going to have to do something about this. He's done it twice now, and Scyther will have to pick it up and go for it himself. Do they have the Overwatch? They do. Scyther will be able to get him, but actually, he had to get off a plant to do so. He kills yet another, and he has to go for the plant yet again. Where are his teammates? Muzi gets the kill, and that's going to be it. Always is all the way upstairs, and, well, there's not really much you can do from that position.
There's very, very little support system set up for that plan. As we saw, players from Empire were still all over the place. Yeah, some of them were up on top trying to support it. We had at least one sitting further back at the freezer connection trying to assist with that as well, but they had done nothing to force out the utility at the previous point in that round, and nothing especially to deal with the bakery setup. So everybody from NIP was cool, calm, and collected and had no problems throwing out the aggression to stop that plan time after time after time again and negotiate a third overall round. This is a great bounce back from NIP as they're really in control here so far on Kafe.
Yeah, that initial round was very, very scary, but it really didn't seem as though with these rounds that we've seen past that Ninjas in Pyjamas were sweating at all when it came to Kafe. This has been looking quite stellar across the board from them, excuse me. But as of now, headed back up towards Bar Cocktail, and this is a site that gave him so many issues initially, but they could possibly get in the way of Empire this time around, just like they have these previous three.
Starting to see a bit more as to why this map is banned out so often against NIP here, despite the weird stats on their win percentage. I think it looking like NIP has really brought a lethal strategy, at least for the defensive side, to the table to negotiate a win here and potentially take us to that third and final map on Clubhouse as well. Empire needs to recenter themselves very quickly, as no longer are they being gifted these early 1v1s or these opportunities to get advantages versus NIP. It's all falling to them to make their own progress in the round, and so far, ever since the first, they have failed at that 3 times in a row.
Yes, indeed. It might be the curse of the flawless round, honestly. Feeling so confident with that initial win and now not being able to really get anything done. As for the previous time that we saw them attack this, the second time around, definitely didn't go about it in the same fashion. Ninjas in Pyjamas really only did one thing majorly different, and it was have Julio downstairs inside of reading. Everybody else was just playing safely over towards the cocktail side, as well as having their player inside of freezer, but that won't be happening this time around either. Ninjas in Pyjamas have actually thrown a curveball into the bar setup here, so Empire will definitely have to get this info game going early on.
Just what a change-up we've had in this half as well, from starting out, as you mentioned, with a flawless round, and really a big capitalization on the flawless round for Empire as they waltz right through the entire third floor setup that NIP had built up. But ever since then, Empire has really failed to get anything started whatsoever. As we saw in that previous round, yeah, they're able to get themselves into a position to plant, but they don't even get close to getting the full thing down onto the ground as they ignore most of the deeper setup from NIP and pay the price for it, as the utility was left aplenty for NIP to use to stop that. so many times here. And we're going to start to see them get a tad more aggressive in terms of their opening positioning here for NIP. You can see specifically, again, that cigar positioning being maintained here by one of their players as they pushed out to hold that one and try to slow down the kind of initial hatch drops that we're going to get out of Empire. As a result of that, Empire are going to choose not to immediately deal with it. They're going to use some of their fragmentation grenades to be able to take out the utility supporting the player inside of Freezer. And if they can get lucky, get the player itself.
Empire, specifically Joystick, working out towards White Stairs. He won't take out the default cam either because that would give up his location, as he knows that more than likely someone is directly above him. He had to have heard that barbed wire that Julio just sprinted through, but Joystick won't be able to do the same. As soon as he steps on that barbed wire, Julio's going to swing into this, so he'd have to win that close fight. And instead, it's better for him to just play inside of this space and see if he can get somebody to rotate into him. He's going to start trying to progress forward a little bit, as obviously we are getting down to the last minute, and oh, he gets right on the edge of the barb, and Julio actually steps up into the position. Perfectly timed here from Joystick, as he'll be able to take down the NIP member.
So that's Empire once again finding their good footing. We hadn't seen really since the first round. They do try to go for a second one. Joystick a little bit off the mark to be able to lock down that player and no damage will really bleed over either. The second one though, wrong side of the case. Let's see though. Oh no! He walks over Pino with a fatal mistake because he was probably safe for the other side, but no longer. He goes down to the second frag grenade, and that's now a 2-0 lead on kills here for Empire. Keep in mind though, time is low, only 30 seconds left, so it's not impossible for NIP to swing this back here in the dying seconds of the round.
Just the Pyjamas does have the time on their side, John, but a lot to do. Cycle will take down Dan, always fires back, though. They're going to have to get something done up against him. Look at this prime real estate that he's occupying here on the balcony. Heaven is looking so crispy for him. Muzi will be able to pick up one, but not before Always shuts him down. And what a round from him. Empire strikes back.
So Empire, once again, able to find that early pressure that had been evading them for the previous 3 rounds there. The opening kill, as well as the nice follow-up with their utility. Once again, both rounds they won as well. They've been able to get one of those frag grenade kills from down below. So the move from NIP to actually counteract that ended up saving their life on the second attempt. And now that we don't get it on the third follow-up, immediately we see repeated success coming out from Empire there. So NIP need to once again readjust their strategy and find a way to win into that. Thankfully, they don't have to worry about it too much, as they're not going to even play into that site anymore. They're going to go directly towards a reading room where they had no problem controlling that on the one time it's been played out so far.
I love how Empire did that, because what they ended up doing with that frag grenade going off and killing, I believe, Pino, they actually timed that with Always swinging into Heaven, and that's exactly how he got into that position. So he wipes out the cocktail player, doesn't have to worry about that anymore, and now Always has free reign of everybody else inside of the site because he knows that the cocktail member can't contest his swing into the actual window. So very well done from Empire and their understanding of how they needed to break apart Ninjas and Pyjamas defense.
Let's take a look at the final setup from the defensive side of NIP. Already negotiating at minimum the tie point at what would be 3-3 should they drop this final round, but going to be trying to negotiate themselves something a little bit better here if they could push up towards 4-2. Remember what we were talking about at the beginning of this map. Currently statistics do favor the attack, however, slightly of the plays that we have had so far in this tournament. So if that continues to be the case here, NIP will be in a good position once again to carry the warpath forward onto our third battleground. Over on Clubhouse here, Empire as well, failing to pick up some of their own rounds. Going to be certainly wanting to try and negotiate for this third one here if they can get it. And they'll have a good opportunity to do so, as NIP will be forced to split up a little bit here with the extended setup going to the third floor once again.
They are in reading room as well as fireplace hall. It's a necessity to hold on to that top floor just to make sure that there's no guaranteed plant going down inside of the reading space. It tends to be where we end up seeing that go down. Obviously, we've had a couple of teams going for some fireplace plants, as they'll be able to get control of Christmas and guarantee no one can man the hatch, and trying to sneak it in to the left-hand side single panel could be the adjustment later on for Empire as they're looking to tie this up. Gemini will hop in, and they'll recognize that Kamikaze is currently playing inside of Shaiko.
So finding out that first player here, needing to find ways to counteract against. You can see the pressure from Empire building up over on the cocktail side of things. That's just going to cause a couple players from NIP to shift their perspective over towards Cigar end as well. So all this utility being dumped in from Empire potentially against it. We can see the full width of the flash grenades there available for Dan, and at least one of the frags on Joystick being used to try and counteract some of this pressure. One frag coming out from Always as well. So going back to the main point, huge amounts of utility being dumped here to try to clear out this setup, and still, the large majority of it is honestly yet to be dealt with as they just shift positions over towards Cigar side, and they're sitting nice and pretty now with still over half the round to go.
This is going to be very difficult for any of the Empire members to try and actually get in towards the building, but luckily enough, it doesn't seem like they need that in order to get some kills. Pino will be the first to fall yet again here. Previously from the frag grenade, but this time it's from a heads-up gunfight from Always. Psycho and the rest of the squad waiting to see what Empire's next move is going to be. Currently occupying the cocktail windows and looking to get something going on this top floor. A drone will mark out Julio. He won't be able to get that with the M590 at range, as we have a pretty sneaky Nip player in behind the bar here. It's Kamikaze yet again that could possibly get some serious kills, but no, he's going to lose his life to Joystick. And oh, not like this, Psycho. They send the Nitro Cell outside as well, and with Shepard with very low HP, it could have been it, but he's moved perfectly and gotten yet another onto Julio. It's up to Muzi to prevent not only the perfect round, but hopefully fight back in a certain capacity.
All right, perfect round dead at least there. Muzi picking up a first trade against Scyther. Won't go any further than that, but Empire getting a nearly flawless round to end out the half in a very similar way to how they started it. Great control and a bit of overzealousness from NIP. They're coming in as they continue to contest for that third floor control after their initial utility had been pushed out over on Cocktail side. They tried to keep the fight going, but that only played into the favor of Empires. It was way too easy to isolate out those players once they lacked support.
Yeah, and Nip forcing Empire's hand in a lot of different ways, seeing a completely different Empire inside of those last two rounds and the way they wanted to handle things, especially with how they were occupying the windows and really applying pressure to Ninjas in Pyjamas in a way that they weren't exactly ready for. Also, a big change up there from Dan, basically pulling the gloves off when it came to Nomad. He's like, get rid of this AK. We're bringing it back in the ARX. We want to deal some damage here, boys and girls. And he's going to be able to get it done as well. Although Dan definitely not having as stellar as a game he did in Game 1, but that's A-okay because Always is currently 7-2.
Always certainly doing some good work here for Empire, and while other players like Dan, who was on fire in our first map, fell off a little bit, as we saw in that last round. They're starting to come alive as we get deeper into this map as well. The confidence possibly starting to brew back out here for Empire. You have to worry for Nip's sake about what we're potentially going to see from them, as once again, they try to throw some aggressive plays out, pay the price for it. Thankfully, again, they're going to a different side, so I don't imagine we're going to see any echoing effects off those last few rounds here. But if they fall into that hesitant state that we saw them fall into in Coastline, could be the beginning of the end for them in this series.
Most definitely. 3-3 score line, dead even coming into this second half here for both of these teams. Kafe, definitely a finicky map when it comes down to this, and from what we've seen so far, it really can break down either way. The big thing here for Empire on this defense is recognizing that Nip will more than likely go for a similar play around the cocktail defense and trying to get these nades under them. 6 nades right now for Ninjas in Pyjamas. Julio and Kamikaze both rocking stuns, so they'll be able to burn out those ADSs as well as assist with the Aruni gates around the map.
It's already 30 seconds gone by, a pretty uneventful 30 seconds, as you guys would generally expect to see at the beginning of any siege round here. Just got that little wrinkle to play down below. We're going to be certainly keeping an eye on Scyther all the way on the first floor. And he's not alone either. You can see Joystick positioned over by the white doorway. I think more so trying to watch out in case NIP wanted to send anyone here initially, so he'll more than likely rotate back up. But I do definitely want to keep an eye on our other player positioned closer towards Bakery to see if they try to do anything later on in the round. Away from that, though, it's just your standard hold here. We got the extension from Dan over onto the inside of Cigar, but he's going to quickly abandon that after being spotted out here. He's quickly trying to make the transition as well, being careful not to reveal himself to the skylight. It's going to be Scyther that ends up finding the opener here also versus Pino, knocking out the sledge. Thankfully, a third floor hold, not going to necessarily need him. And as well, the exchange comes in from Psycho pretty much immediately. So we go from a 5v5 very quickly down to a 4v4.
But all picks are not made the same, John. This is a huge discrepancy here. Not only taking down Pino and one of the top frags for Ninjas in Pyjamas, but also getting rid of nades and the sledgehammer. Whereas Shepard, his utility is going to persist. It does not matter here. All of these are still going to be locked up, and it's still going to be something that Ninjas in Pyjamas have to deal with, whilst also being down one of the main frags.
So Always just going to annoy his opponent a little bit. He actually does lose the camera as a result of popping that open as well there. So I might have misidentified that. However, it's not going to matter, as the player that was wielding that utility a few moments ago is now going to be dead due to the very nice Nitro Cell that was chucked out from Dan, bringing it down to a 4v3. Dan continuing to pressure forward now that they have the advantage. Once again, you can see he's got a little bit of a line to potentially play through there if someone from NIP peeks into it, but not going to find them. And a drone getting pinged out there that he'll be watching out for, so tries to back away from that one. Does see a new Maverick hole being created, so he's going to get the heck out of here before Nade or some other form of utility gets chucked through that could lead to his death.
Yeah, they're really worried about somebody inside of Freezer. That's what Psycho's nading right now, just because of the similar position that we saw them play previously. Definitely a hot spot for a lot of bodies to be. But speaking of which, Joystick's found a body of his own. He'll take down Psycho. Kamikaze going to take a serious amount of damage from the Roni. Julio's been down, and it's looking like it's going to be yet another Empire round as Dan finishes that up. Kamikaze will hop down off the balcony, and that's basically the round there, folks. Kamikaze really isn't going to be able to do much from this position.
The third floor continuing to truly favor Empire, even from a new side here. That'll be a 3-1 record for them on this site, just inside of this map alone. And there you go, Joystick just clotheslining the last opponent there as he tries to navigate his way up the red stairs and denied as he reaches the top with a quick headshot coming in from Joystick there. Beautifully done once again from Empire. Great control, just like we saw on their last round as well. On the attacking side for this very same site, they'll move right along here over towards Reading for the next upcoming round.
Well, Nip's still very calm. No one really seeming too aggravated about the position that they're currently in, just trying to figure out exactly what they can do up against Empire. The biggest thing right now is that these picks are bountiful for Empire on the defensive side. Nitro cells, gunfire, everything coming on to Ninjas in Pyjamas in the moment, and there's no way that they can really fight back. They only were able to muster a singular frag inside of that initial round there for round 7. And, well, now they're looking to change up quite a few things. Biggest obstacle now is that they kind of have to play into a similar setup. Yes, again, it is the second floor, but as we all know from what we've seen thus far, they're going to play this top floor. It's very important to the overall story of what is going to happen inside of this round. Also bring in some pretty serious utility to make sure that no one can get too forceful towards the site, just because of the way that Nip ends up playing their later rounds. Once it gets down to around that minute time, if Nip has been stagnant, they'll start just walking in towards you in different areas and can really catch the defense off guard. We saw it happen on Coastline. We've seen it happen a monumental amount of times with this team overall.
It's interesting that NIP are going to be so calm here as well. Yes, this is the group stage, and for some of our legendary teams, they would have no problem making it out of the group stage here. NIP are looking at a potential 0-2 record on series overall here, which is not going to be good considering there's only 2 additional matchups aside from that they'll have to play out for the group, which could leave them in a very, very bad spot to be that 5th team in the group if things continue to go awry, where they would be eliminated here in the groups if things continue to go badly.
It would be hilariously tragic. And not in the sense of, oh yeah, it's funny. It's just like this, the way that we have this structured right now for the group stage, the stellar teams should not be getting knocked out. Like, there's really no way that you should be losing and actually getting, knocked out in groups.
That was my thought pattern for, for the Titans that have already proven themselves and made it to multiple SIs. This was just like a seeding stage for them, basically, here. They would have only been able to need to take, like, 2 or 3 of their games, maybe just 2 of them, and they're going to be okay. They make it through, they get into the bracket, then focus up for the big games. But it's not necessarily the case for some of our teams, as we're seeing here, specifically for NIP here. They were getting put into the hot seat very, very quickly. And for Empire, they're feeling more and more comfortable here as they were able to rebound in their matchup versus the Sonics yesterday and are now in great control here of their matchup versus NIP.
This could be a serious issue for them, actually, because they only got a singular map off of Sandbox yesterday. That means Sandbox got their 2 points, Nip got 1. If they lose this map right here, that's 0 points. None. And that's also 3 for Empire, which means they've basically guaranteed themselves going into the final stage, even if things do go very wrong over these next couple of days. But for Ninjas in Pyjamas, this could mean that starting to sweat a little bit on that brow as that realization sets in.
A very uneventful opening to this round here as we're nearly 2 minutes into it and a whole lot of nothing has happened here except for NIP.
That's a freebie.
Slowly clearing things out. Pino nearly getting caught here in the meanwhile here as he's brought down to a sliver of HP. We can see some more members of NIP, specifically Psycho, trying to open up the cocktail hold, but it's not going to reveal a whole lot. No damage onto any of the Empire members. They seem to be very well aware of the damage they got onto Pino, and their entire setup for the most part is going to fall back now to that second floor as they only have a minute left to turtle out here inside of the site.
Scyther double checking to make sure the Christmas hatch is still sealed before he progresses forward into train. This is looking like an Empire round across the board, even with 5 people still alive. It's up to Nip to start getting these picks that they desperately need going into these last 30 seconds. Pino, though, although he is very low on HP, he'll still be allowed to do his job given the circumstances, so the sledge will be breaking up this floor, and Muzi possibly with the answer to what's going on this mid-level.
See, once again, the members of NIP just desperately hunting for someone on these top-down angles. Oh, Kamikaze so close to isolating out Dan, and he's going to get him, finding an exchange. Julio with an important second pickup immediately after that against Scyther as well. That's exactly what we needed to see, but now we need them to get into the site right here, right now. Someone needs to put that case down onto the ground, and they won't be able to do it as always. Drops it in that dying second, giving yet another round over to Empire.
A magical round there from Empire, respecting what Nip could have done with that clear up upstairs and what they had already established. We see Joystick deal some serious damage to Pino, then fall off with the rest of the team. They start to play things horizontally and take control of that instead because they know Nip is not in that space. And the train play is what ends up winning them the round from always, as he just simply walks back to the fireplace and is able to prevent Habana from sticking the plant. Empire up by 2 rounds.
Empire starting to feel more and more confident once again about their position. Flawless so far in this defensive half with the win upstairs on the 3rd floor. Now the 2nd floor, and they'll continue to move downwards here as they go to a 1st floor hold. What could very well be the final one of their initial rotation, where we'll just see them go right back up to the 3rd floor after this and try to close out the map if things continue to go in their favor. Meanwhile, for NIP, operator lot going to remain the same, but the clearing path finally going to differ itself a bit if they would like to here, as finally most of the focus is going to be contained to a singular floor here on the 1st.
I'll tell you what, my friend, I'm excited to see Empire with their full bench, because I think we're even going to get a better performance out of them than what we've already seen over these last couple of days. We've definitely seen some moments where Empire had some cracks in the armor, but overall, it has been very strong from the Russian machine. Ninjas in Pyjamas not able to get too much over on them. Collectively right now, they have 5 rounds through 2 maps.
Looking very, very confident indeed here for the Empire roster. Not going to be too much in terms of any surprises here as far as their kitchen setup is concerned. We are going to get that little bit of an extension once again out into Bakery, specifically for the Jaeger to play behind. He's got the 2 ADSs there, and they can hide up behind the counter, quickly fall back behind that rotation if things get a little bit too dodgy to stay alive. And of course, the Echo in play for Shepard too. We talked about that in one of our matches yesterday, about how he's become kind of a mainstay for this site. A lot of debris on the roof, and there's even that little shelf we saw one player chuck one up into where you can kind of hide those yokai drones. And if you're able to keep the Echo alive, of course, swing it out for a nice clutch in the dying seconds of the round.
Yeah, always a nice one to keep in your back pocket for, if we do see a bunker plant or something like that, like Shepard went for earlier on their kitchen offense. Shepard already abusing these Echo drones handedly as he's getting some information for Scyther. Also, I think we already saw some damage, yes indeed, onto Dan, just a little bit, nothing too crazy, as he's actually playing inside of VIP and not with the M590 SMG-11 setup, instead the FMG-9, a gun that honestly we don't get to see enough of. This is the SMG that we see on Nook, as well as the 2 SAS ops on defense, and it's actually a pretty solid SMG overall, especially with that 1.5. It's highly abusable for positions like what we see from Joystick in the moment.
Got 2 horizontal extensions away from the site here for Empire. One inside of Coach Check, and the other one, of course, we were talking about before, back towards VIP. And it's actually going to be a double towards Coach Check, but Scyther, some bad timing there, walks back into Coach Check just as a nade was being chucked in, and that'll give Psycho the opening kill of the round with a very well-timed nade here. Empire going to have to be very cautious about how they try to leverage any further aggression. We can see that Shepard still wants to try and play towards this position, towards Kochek. Dan also still over here towards VIP too. He's going to actually chuck out one of his Toxic Babes, but more likely realizing that the threat may not be there right now. Still keeps it blocked, however, eventually implodes that grenade. Still get a lot of pressure against him, and ultimately now lose Dan, actually, as the pressure from Muzi continues to boil in. Shepard also not ready for the swing over from Whiskey here, so things looking rough, but a very smooth headshot against Kamikaze to drop the case. That's certainly going to, at minimum, cause some delay here in the NIP camp.
Well, this is the good news for Empire in the current moment. Look at the drone count for Ninjas in Pyjamas. They have 0 info as to what's going on in sight. They've dealt the damage to Empire, but now this is all face checking. The good news for them, though, they still got some utility in the back pocket as well as some solid rifles to be able to get this done. But Joystick knows what Empire's done. They've seen the drone count, and they know that they have 0 intel as to what's going on in the current moment. He's currently playing inside of Small Bacon. Really nobody aware of the current moment as to what could possibly happen. Joystick going to get a pick up onto Psycho, but immediately gets refragged by Julio. And Ninjas in Pyjamas starting to surge forward. Shepard possibly able to find one, but it's going to be the crossfire from Pino here as Ninjas in Pyjamas will finally get their first offensive round.
Smooth clear coming in there from NIP, capitalizing on the overzealousness that we were getting out of the members of Empire. They're trying to play for early control, trying to aggress in areas like Kochek and VIP. NIP was aware of it the entire time, and as you saw, was dumping loads of drones into those positions to reaffirm it constantly, so it made it a very easy process for NIP to just overwhelm those players or manage to find them out with some very nice angle play, and as well open up the site very easily in the dying seconds of the round there as it went down to about a 3v1 there.
Yeah, very interesting to see Empire occupying Kochek so aggressively when they knew that more than likely that amount of utility would be pouring in there, just because they really didn't have anything to assist them inside of that space. So a little bit of a blunder there, but it is what it is. Empire's still in the lead, and obviously them recognizing that the kitchen defense probably not the best thing to be bringing going up against Ninjas in Pyjamas, especially with the way that they were able to work that bottom floor there, dealing a lot of damage to Empire when Empire really wasn't able to fight back in any capacity. So they're going to send it to the top floor here where Ninjas in Pyjamas had a lot of issues the first time around.
Very kind of open policy in terms of the overall site setup we had down there in Kitchen 2. So once things started to deteriorate, it just made it that much easier for NIP to walk right in and find a few more members of Empire just standing out in the open.
It's an easy thing to forget in Rainbow Six that angles work both ways. You know, you establish a lot of these things and you're like, oh, dude, we can shut them down from any avenue that they possibly want to walk in from. But if you get distracted by one side of the building, they just so happen to, oh, I don't know, aggress on the other side. Now they have some angles to abuse against you, and that's exactly what we see inside of that, especially with Dan, not Joystick, Dan inside of VIP there on the smoke as he was able to get picked up by Ninjas in Pyjamas out towards the white garage.
All right, so let's see if Empire can quickly rebound as they'll be returning to a bit more successful territory in terms of their earlier advantages in this half. Back up to the third floor, where they're going to look to try and negotiate their 6th round here, but with NIP hot on their heels by only 1 round and an overall score of 4-5. NIP wasting no time opening up the usual hatches here and trying to reverse themselves downwards through that. We are not going to have any presence from Empire extended out into Cigar or Christmas this time, so we'll continue to see a very easy drop here for the NIP members to at least take that top red control and start moving themselves from here.
Well, now the patience game for both of these teams is the drones need to figure out what Empire's doing on this top floor. Also occupying some other spaces. You can see Joystick worried about those frag grenades coming for Cocktail that we could see later on, as well as quite a few of the Empire bodies overall actually dedicated to the bottom space of the east side of the building, just trying to make sure that NIP can't actually work their way in here and deal some serious damage. As Dan and always on site to occupy this for the time being. Pino will get onto the Cocktail windows here as we start to have the stuns pour out. This could be pretty fast acting depending on how NIP want to try and handle this.
Continuing to see this time tick down here. Very, very slow approach for both of these teams as both of them very cautious about the potential outcome from them. They're the first to make a mistake. A very well-placed Nitro shut down against Pino from Shepard, though, gives Empire the first kill and now gives them the clear to get a little bit more aggressive here, and they're immediately going to swing on that one. Psycho sneaking one in, and the call's not made for Always. He's not able to react in time, so Psycho gets a second going for him as well, and now a third. He's just waltzing right in from Cocktail side. Dan finally gets some control going for himself as he trades out against Muzi, but Psycho is still a huge problem inside a Cocktail.
Well, Psycho, a lot to do inside of this one, and be an ace clutch from him. Case currently down, as well as a laser gate actually holding him back. He'll have to transition back over to the space, and Shepard, what the hell just happened? He misses every shot out of that Roni, and now it's down to Dan, and luckily enough, the M590 will clean it up. Shepard has got to be sweating bullets right now inside of his hotel room. He's probably so happy he's not on camera.
Yeah, absolutely the case. You're probably really happy he's not next to his teammates. He was getting some glares after that one.
Everybody's staring at him like, hey man, what the hell was that?
It's like, oh, the ping.
He's like, man, this Cat 6 cable ran to my room. Trash. I hate this.
I think it's 5 feet too long. It's one thing extra that I'm not used to here.
The light traveling through this is actually slower than everybody else's cables. I'm telling you right now. That why'd you guys have to show that again? That poor guy. I felt bad watching it over again. But I mean, the biggest thing there for Empire is that they're able to do some very serious damage control. It's going to be a timeout from Ninjas in Pyjamas, but to keep it honest with you guys, I'm going to be honest. I already said that. Oh my god. It's a little bit too little too late.
Yeah, it's another 6-round pause in the last map as well here, so NIP not finding a chance to do this previously, thinking that they kind of had some control over the matchup prior to this point, but not the case anymore here as we've gone to a 4-6 scoreline. Empire on the precipice of getting themselves a 2-0 victory, denying NIP of any points out of this series whatsoever, giving Empire the full spread of all 3 of them, boosting them forward here in the group standings and leaving them in a very, very secure position. We'll be closing out the attack pause in just a second here, and NIP will have to be ready to face the music as we get back into another round, another reading room hold, which again, we've already seen success deployed towards this site earlier on in the half from Empire, so this is just a repeat for them once more.
And once again, we have a map filled with ninjas in pajamas not able to secure opening bloods up against their opponents. And that's been the tail of the tape for them this entire LAN. Their entries have not been there. Basically, the entire team negative in that capacity at the current moment. So it's something that we're really, really looking into and hoping that they can possibly get something going in the future here. But, I mean, the future's not looking too bright in the moment. It's also looking pretty short as Empire is headed towards Reading and Fireplace Hall.
And this is with Empire already showing some issues in their own entry game and their initial match versus Sandbox Gaming yesterday as well. So that's not to make a point that like Empire, like the super strong entry team, it's only in this series where we've seen it. So NIP just not able to contend with what an opponent on a very similar level to them is bringing to the table here and starting to cause massive issues due to their inability to fight in that respect here. Still those 2 rounds, though, is all that's needed for them to be able to swing this one back. So we will wait and see if NIP might just yet be able to save themselves. They'll need to do it in overtime, though, so not only just those 2 rounds need to be picked up, but 2 additional ones after that will need to be found as well if they want to send us over to Clubhouse for the final battle.
Yeah, I might be hungry, but food can wait. Ninjas in Pajamas really needs to get something going here, not only for their sake, but for everybody's sake at home, because I believe that all of us expected something more out of this squad coming into this. This is a Six Invitational, for God's sakes. This is our champion from the previous year. We need some semblance of anything from Ninjas in Pajamas. Yes, they've been able to get it going on this map, but the damage has already been dealt on Coastline, and now with their map choice at match point by the opposing squad, I mean, this is going to be a very hard pill to swallow if it does end up going Empire's way.
Scyther trying to knock out the drone, sneak its way through Cigar. Unfortunately, it's going to be unsuccessful here, so all that intel will bleed over. Not like it's a massive loss or anything for him to get revealed this early on. This is kind of a typically expected setup with the extension up towards the 3rd floor here. He'll be trying to fend off any early repels or descents from the red hatch, but looking like he's actually going to have a pretty calm time here initially. That is, of course, until we see that repel that you guys saw from the blue silhouette work its way onto the White Hall window here, where it's looking like 1, if not 2 players are potentially going to try and get aggressive against that. They'll end up shooting out the by clone here, and unfortunately ends up hitting it once or twice, so he's going to give away the position of the player on repel, but again, not too much of a surprise. We can already see one player waiting for it. We didn't see, though, was just how close they were, so Dan chucks it out on a timing play, and it works out as he gets the opening kill yet again against Psycho.
Well, Dan, yet again, showing up for Empire as he has shored things up against Always. Not the greatest start to the map, but now positive in his scoreline. 8-6 currently as Ninjas in Pajamas are trying to find an answer. Muzi trying to creep up White, but is Dan aware of this? He's able to get the drone, and that's going to force Muzi back. He doesn't want to commit just yet here and possibly get blasted away by the member sitting on the top of the stairwell. With a minute remaining, Ninjas in Pajamas has got to do something here. They've been able to at least look into the top floor, but I mean, John, they're stuck inside a Cigar.
Yeah, they've barely made any progress in terms of map control here. Scyther's just patiently waiting for someone to try and pressure him. Obviously, Dan fended off the only real threat to Scyther's life up until this point. Kamikaze as well. At this point, just hoping for an over-aggression on Empire due to how much control they still have. And oh, he's actually going to get it too with the timing, man. So unfortunate.
Oh, no.
And he gets clipped from over and mining. Muzi, to his credit, very quick on the exchange, so at least avoids this from going completely out of control, but still a 3v4, 22 seconds remaining. Dan more than ready to fend off this pressure from the hell doorway here. It's not really going to work out. They don't even seem to have capability to take out the laser gate, so they'd have to force the issue on that as well and just run right through it, eat the HP from Pino. Oh, getting shredded through the self-destruction wall over there as well. Julio with one more exchange coming in, but he's the only one still standing for his team as Pino has been down. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Scyther closes it down, and it's going to go all the way for Empire as they take a quick 2-0 victory against the Ninjas, the former SI champions from the last year. They take it 7-2 and 7-4 against them here as they continue to dominate inside the group stage.
It's been good and it's been fun, Ninjas in Pajamas, but it's Empire all day. As always, Shepard and Joystick top out the top end of the scoreboard here for Empire, and what a series from them. But honestly, this is just all due to a lot of downfalls from Ninjas in Pajamas. This team is just not looking good in any sense of the term in the moment.
Huge lack of confidence is the first issue there. We even saw that show up once again on the final round. Not much they could do about it as well there, as it seemed like, again, there was a complete lack of what they even wanted to do to try to clear things out. Just on the extension, you mentioned it. We were sitting with about 40 seconds left, and they were still trying to clear out Scyther right there inside of his bathroom position, because the only other player that had been able to do that got nitroed out inside of the first minute of the round. Very similar story transpiring over the course of many of the Coastline rounds too. So NIP need to take a good look at themselves, find a way to increase that confidence, increase their aggressive capability, especially on the attacking side. Otherwise, plenty of teams in this tournament are going to be abusing that issue in the very same way.
Yeah, this is one of those teams that if you look over their history in the last 2 years and you just look at the discography of maps that they played, you don't think that they're going to get picked apart for fundamental things. But that's exactly what we're seeing in the moment. They're losing to fundamental Siege. It's just not very good. There's really no other way to put it. I wish that we had some amazing reason as to why Ninjas in Pyjamas was losing these maps, but Empire isn't doing anything special, folks.
At the same time, that is huge credit to Empire, considering they were showing some issues in their initial match versus the Sonics yesterday morning as well, and they quickly rebound to take a confident 2-0 win against some of the best that Latin America has to offer. That'll do it for the two of us for right now. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and when we do come back, we'll have the Command Center ready to break this game down.